Hello. You are listening to the Carroll Connection with your host, Jared Carroll.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Carroll Connection. I'm your host, Jared Carroll, here to bring you guys another great episode. I did want to take a chance to shout out my last episode 223 with Julie Harley. She's a tattoo artist, and we talked about how she got into tattooing, going all the way back to going to school for stop motion animation, and how that kind of started to change and work its way into tattooing, and also becoming a mother, and how that influences her ability to tattoo and stuff like that. So you can check that out at thecarrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also available Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major listening platforms. If you'd like to watch your podcast, go on YouTube, search the Carroll Connection or at Jared M. Carroll, and it should pop up. And if you want to be a guest or return as a guest, hit me up on Instagram at Jared M. Carroll or at the Carroll Connection. We'll set that up, as well as plugging the 5 Pillars of Creating Meaningful Life, only available on Amazon. And if you buy the book and you read the book, please submit the review on Amazon. It goes a long way in the algorithm. So that brings me to today's episode 224, bringing back a guest from, I forget what episode we just did, but my girlfriend Elyse Beauregard. Welcome to the podcast.
Back.
Appreciate you for doing this. I had some cancellation reschedule issues last 2 weeks, and I'm not doing an episode until probably my birthday reflection after this. So I kind of wanted to get on here and do another episode. So this episode is going to be titled Change is Inevitable. And partially the reason I wanted to get on this, I'm having a career change, and I wanted to kind of talk about the value of changing, getting out of your comfort zone, kind of the reasons why I force myself to kind of go into this space to search something different and kind of get out there. And I'll go into a different topic for my birthday reflection in November. So it'll kind of build off this episode. So you listen to this episode and then the birthday reflection in November, it'll kind of make sense. It'll kind of flow into each other. But I felt like why I wanted to talk about change is inevitable, because as I was thinking about my career and where I wanted to go with stuff, um, I didn't want to feel stuck anymore. I didn't want to feel like I was in the same place doing the same thing. It was getting to that almost that 6-year mark where opportunities are there and you like the people, you like the organization you're with, but you almost feel like there's something more out there and you want to grow. I think when you want to grow, you have to create those opportunities. No one's going to force you to grow. No one's going to force you to change. But change is going to happen because time keeps going. No matter what you do, if you sit and stay where you are, time just keeps going and things will change around you, which inevitably is going to make you have to change, because you can't stay the same way for your entire life. Because if you do, everything's going to pass by you and you're going to get left behind because things grow and advance. And if you're not actively going to choose that, then you're going to get left behind regardless. And you're going to get stuck in roles or stuck in relationships or stuck in positions that you don't want to be in no longer. And it's going to be even harder to get yourself out of those, because the longer you stay in certain situations, especially ones that are not progressing you forward, you'll find yourself in a situation that's hard to get out of. And that's kind of where I was looking at with my career. And I wanted to learn something different and be in a new organization. And I accepted a new role somewhere else, and I'm excited for that opportunity to just be around new people and learn something new that's different than what I was doing. And it even rolls into the content aspect. I mean, me and you have been dabbling with TikTok, and I know you just launched a page for our dog Little Miss. Go check that out. Follow it on TikTok, Little Miss, and
Miss Moss the bully.
at Miss Moss the Bully. Type in Little Miss, and if you follow me, it also
You'll
should
find
pop
it
up.
if you put Little
Yeah,
Miss in there.
whether you follow the Carroll Connection or my Jared Harris page, I followed that account, and you'll find it that way too if you look for it that way. But doing something like that, completely different than what you want to do on social media. And we've talked about making content or doing content or finding ways, whether it's stuff that your crafts or journaling, or when I look at my stuff, I've been doing the podcasting. I used to do the relationship content, and I had to always change. I had to do something different. And right now I launched a couple TikToks today of just me talking and stuff like that, trying to get my feet wet again in like actively being on TikTok versus just clipping stuff from the podcast and putting it out there, because there is something inside of me creatively that does want change, and I want something different, not to change the podcast, but to change like my content on other platforms, I guess.
Mhm.
And I've been looking for that next step creatively. I've talked about it on the podcast. I've talked to you privately about that. And it's definitely a driver for me to find something to kind of put my energy into creatively, because I do that with the podcast, but I've got a like routine and habit down that works for me, and I have future guests lined up and stuff to wrap up the year, and I wrote the book, and there's this just something there that I just need to do something to put my energy towards. And in the past I've had success on TikTok, so I'm hoping to kind of change what I've been doing and take stuff from the past and maybe reincorporate that in a certain way. But yeah, I think with the concept of change is inevitable, like there's no way around it. You have to change. Like it's part of the human experience, and I don't think enough people really talk about it and like encourage that. Like you see the motivational speakers, the motivational videos, but like no one kind of breaks down like what change looks like, what change could actually be. And I think us kind of diving into this kind of makes a lot of sense. I don't know if you wanted to go off anything that I've kind of said right there though.
Yeah, I think change is kind of similar to something we talked about in the episode that I was on before, in terms of like uh socializing slash in person connection, stuff like that. It's like a muscle. I think the same could be said about change. Is It's a muscle that you have to use enough. If you don't, it's going to be even harder to make a change when you're kind of at a point where you're almost forced to. And similarly to what you were saying, in the sense of change is going to happen regardless, but you have to actively make choices in order to make change that you want. Otherwise, it's going to be change you might not want unless you decide you're going to do something about it or make a change yourself. So like you said, time passes, things are going to change. It's just a matter of if it's a change you want or not. If it's not, you need to do something about it. You're gonna get stuck in that. And the longer you're staying in that, the harder it is to make that change. There's a quote that I'm not gonna get exactly right, but it's basically the longer you stay on the wrong train, the more expensive it is to get back. So the longer you stay stuck in something that you're not happy with, the more difficult it is to dig yourself out of that.
Yeah, 100%. And I've talked openly about my TikTok page in the past, and that's exactly kind of how I felt. Where um, the more I invested into that page, whether it was time and effort or the content that I was making, the harder it was to stop. And there's also science behind that, of like the dopamine rush of getting the views and the clicks and the validation of other people feeling the same way that you feel. And that's a difficult thing to kind of grasp with, because like you're being validated in a certain sense and the content's there, and like things are working, but it's not how you want it to be.
Mhm.
And it goes into the point where change is happening, like you're growing, like things are happening in that sense, but not in the way that you wanted to. And you have to be the active participant to change that.
Mhm.
You have to be the active participant in your life to make the difference, to actually grow the way you want to grow. Because there's tons of stuff out there that is out of our control, and there's variables that we can't control that are going to influence change. But we have to do our best to actually be in control of the things that we can control, which are very few. Like there's stuff that we can't control and there's stuff we can control, but putting deliberate effort into being the best person that you can be, trying to figure out ways, if you want to be a content creator, what's the best time to post? When can you post? What can I post? And taking the stuff that you see on social media and relating it to your content, and actively changing the content to be more engaging or more inspiring or more educational. Like I've seen that TikTok a lot lately, of like your content either has to inspire, educate, or entertain. And that's really true to like capture someone's attention. And it kind of flows into that aspect of change. And I wanted to relate the book, the last chapter specifically of the 5 pillars of creating a meaningful life, which is loss. So if anyone hasn't read it, spoiler, but it's been out for a year. You should have read it by now. It's 60 pages. Read the book. Um, Loss is one of those things that creates change in a dramatic way that can really affect you mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And it could be loss of job, loss of relationship, loss of pet, like loss of almost anything you could think of. Loss happens regardless. And it's going to, because like we said a little bit earlier in this, is time keeps going. Nothing you can do to stop time, no matter if you're a grieving person, you're celebrating success, waiting for some, like time just keeps going. Like you either adapt or you get left behind. And that's something I've kind of said in relation to AI before. But when I think about loss, loss is an interesting one because it can inspire change because it makes things a little bit more real. When you lose something, sometimes it feels like a part of you is also gone with that loss, and finding ways to not 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 get that piece back, but how to fill that piece that's left. And working to fill that requires change, and change in behavior, change in habit, change in how you have a certain mindset. Like that stuff requires active work, and it's not easy. Like if I reference this podcast and the creation of this podcast, like I've done several times, it required like an emotional toll on me where I felt like a loss of self that required me to change in order to feel more fulfilled, more aligned, more connected to people around me. And that change has built upon itself. And whether I wanted to or not, I was gonna change in that moment of I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this job. I'm in a toxic work environment, and I only had a couple options. Like you either suck it up, you quit, you go get another job and suck it up, or you completely pivot and create something. Like you have options with change, but it's gonna happen. And I think that's like the point I'm kind of driving home, whether it's your career or you want to create content or your relationship or someone in your family or whatever it is, like you want to change something about that, or you don't want to be a part of that, or you want to remove yourself, or you want to be in a different environment or a different relationship, like that requires you to change. And like if you want to attract the right situations or the right person or whatever it is, you have to learn the habits to be that version of yourself to get those things. And it doesn't happen overnight. And I know in the world with TikTok, like we feel like it can be
Mhm.
that way. Um, but in certain ways, that's like gambling. Like
Yeah.
there's an addiction aspect to that. And especially with TikTok, there is that piece of it that's dangerous and we get lost in it. But it's reminding yourself constantly, why did I start this? Why am I doing this? Am I building towards that place that I really want to go still? Or am I actually kind of sabotaging myself and being stagnant and like things are just passing me by instead of me actively being a participant in that change?
Mhm.
And I think that that's kind of why I wanted to get on the mic today and just like talk about this stuff openly because like that is like an active piece of me right now is like the struggle of figuring out what I want to fully change. And right now in a certain part of my life the career change was definitely needed, and that piece is a catalyst too to kind of try to reinvent myself content wise too. So I'm kind of still working through that, and obviously we're constantly going back and forth about like different topics and stuff we could do on TikTok and trying to help me with ideas. But yeah, I think that piece of just change is inevitable, and I thought that was a good talking point, kind of building upon our last podcast that we did together about like the human experience and how it's being substituted out for different things coming into this, and now being like an active participant in change. And this will flow into like my birthday reflection when obviously if you guys listen to the podcast, I do like the reflections on my birthday and talk about my personal things that I want to work on or look forward to. So obviously it's going to flow into that, but I don't know if you had anything to build off of with
At
what else
this
in there.
point, no. I had a few things in the middle, but I'm gonna let you keep going. I don't have anything right now.
You lost it. All
Yeah.
right. But So when I think about the thing with change, and I don't want to be too redundant, like we're getting towards the back. We're almost at 20 minutes. I don't want to like spam repeated talking points, but to kind of like wrap it up in a way that it's like conducive and I don't know if that's even the right word, but I think change is inevitable. I think working on yourself and ways to improve yourself helps with the change, because if you don't do that, things just pass you by. Life passes you by, and like I said earlier, you don't want to be in a stagnant position like 5 6 years later. You're like, damn, I'm still in the same role. Damn, I'm still in this toxic work environment, or I'm in this bad relationship, or um, I'm still XYZ, could be anything. You don't want to be in that position. And if you find yourself in those positions, it requires you to be reflective and honest and hold yourself accountable of how you got into that situation. And if you're not actively learning, or in terms of your career, actively earning what you want to earn, it does require change. It does require you to take the steps of filling out applications or interviewing or working on skills that make you more hireable, whether it's in your organization or outside. And the same thing goes for a relationship. If you're a single person and you want to be in a healthy relationship that works with you, what makes a healthy relationship? Like there's like things about communication, trust. Like, are you a person that someone would want to invest in and start, whether it's a family or just a partnership? Like, you got to ask yourself these questions, and those questions inspire change, because again, change is inevitable and you have to do it regardless. So why not be an active participant in your life? And an active participant means doing the things necessary to get what you want. And you're not always going to get what you want, because life is real, like I say on this podcast. And you have to understand that and accept that, and also be patient too, because just because you want something or you manifest something or you pray for it doesn't mean you're going to get it. And I think a lot of people fall for that trap, because they think, "Oh, I prayed for this, I manifest this, or I believe in the law of attraction, it's going to happen." That's not how that works. Like, it's almost like you had the law of attraction, but you have to master the like law of detachment too, where you let go of that concept of like it's going to happen. Like, you know it's going to happen, but then you just let it be. You don't have to constantly like hyper fixate on it,
Obsess
because
over it. Yeah.
exactly, because you're going to block the blessing in that aspect.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like a good way to kind of wrap up my talking points. I don't know if you have any last points about like change or something you
Yeah.
wanted to go off of what I said.
I mean, I think as soon as I start annoying myself with how much I'm complaining about something that I'm not happy with anymore, I know it's time to make a change or do something in to hopefully change something about my situation. And like you said, just because you are making an effort to make a change or doing things differently doesn't mean you're going to get the end result that you want. But it's better to spend your time making that effort and doing the things that are working towards that change versus just wasting your time complaining. And that's a hard thing that I'm still learning to to do is, you know, do something about it as opposed to complaining. It takes just as much effort, if not more, to complain than it does to start doing things to make that change that you want. Again, it might not happen for you, it might not happen right away, it might not happen ever, but it's going to create opportunities, hopefully at the very least. As if you're consistent with what you're doing, it's you have a much better chance of improving yourself if you're actively doing things to improve yourself than you are just sitting there and complaining about it and not doing anything about it.
Yeah, 100%. Totally agree with that point. I'll add a little bit to that. It was like anytime that I felt like I was complaining about something or constantly nagging about something, it's something that I needed to actively change myself. Like, no one's going to change it for me. No one's going to send out my applications, or no one's going to do the podcast for me. Like,
Right.
I have to do it. Like this is my life. If I want something different to happen, I have to be the change.
Yeah.
Like, I'll never forget but when I was changing like wheels and tires and stuff like that, and I was complaining about like the type of work and the pay and all that stuff. And it was like my junior year, I hadn't had an internship. And I remember my dad's like, well, do something then. And like that kind of resonates with me a lot. Like when I think about whether I was starting the podcast or writing the book or what, or even like right now, like I have to do something. Like I can't just sit here and be like, well, I wish I could do that, or I just don't like this right now. Like
Yeah.
this is like upsetting. This is frustrating. I could do something.
Yeah. And I think it's easy to play the blame game with that too. I know for myself, it's easy to say, "Oh, well, I'm in this situation because this happened," or "I'm in this situation because this person did this or didn't do this." That could be very true and it could not. It could be very possible that you're in a situation that you're in and it's not your fault that you're there. But at the end of the day, you're the only person that's going to get yourself out of that situation. The person who did that to you, who put you in that situation, they're not going to fix it. It's not their life to fix. So you have to be the one to figure that out for yourself. It might not be your fault, but it is your life and you're going to have to figure it out. It's a hard truth to come to terms with, but it's one that's going to only benefit yourself. Once you realize that, then you can get to work on figuring your shit out and helping yourself. 'Cause you're the only person that's gonna be the one to do that.
Yeah, accountability goes hand in hand with active change, and I totally agree with that. Like holding yourself accountable for the things that you can control, like we've talked about on this podcast, and like I keep saying it, being an active participant in the change. Like because again, reiterating here, change is inevitable. Like no matter what you do, you can't stay the same forever. As much as you might want to, as much as you might want to be in that comfort zone and have that job that gives you just enough, and you could do what you want and like hang out with your friends, and you're comfortable and things are good. Like at some point that's not going to be the case anymore, and you don't want it to be too late down the line where you're like, damn, I can't do much
Right.
different things here, and I can't change too much because your life has become so dependent on the lifestyle that you built that change becomes even harder to do. So obviously the sooner you realize this, the younger that you are that you realize this, the faster you can actually make change, because obviously life becomes real and responsibilities come into play, and you have to acknowledge that. And I don't think you see that all the time on social media. Like people are like, just quit your job or change or just start recording TikToks. Like it, and on some level, it is that easy. And I'm not making excuses for not doing that. But I always say this: life is real. Like people have bills, people have responsibilities, people have things that they care about, that they've invested in, that they have to take care of, and they can't always do X, Y, and Z. So like understanding that and being like empathetic towards that, but at the same time having that peace of mind or like that energy of just like, well, it still is your life. You still have to do this. If you want to do this, you still have to do
Yeah.
those things to get to that point.
And I think the sooner you realize that you're unhappy with something, as soon as you realize it, obviously assess like if it's valid or not, like what you're feeling. But as soon as you come to terms with the fact that, okay, this is definitely something I'm not a fan of anymore, this goes back to what I said at the beginning kind of is do it sooner than later because just as an example, someone who's been in a relationship for like 3 years and they realize they're unhappy, much easier to leave uh then and there versus you're in a relationship with someone for 25 years, you have kids with them, you have a life together, your finances are like intertwined, all of that stuff. So much harder for that person to leave because they don't know what their life's going to look like after that. Like they have no idea. They've been so used to being in that environment and reliant on certain things that it's so much harder to change. And some people know they want the change and they don't because they can't fathom what their life would look like if they made that change. So the sooner you realize you want something different, do something about it.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to bring this podcast home, is to do something, because it change is going to happen regardless, like I've said repeatedly, and it's inevitable. So either you're going to be part of the change or you're going to be
On the sidelines.
on the sidelines watching the change
Yeah.
happen, and there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it. So I think that's a good place to kind of bring this podcast home. I didn't want to go too long on this. We're a little over 20 minutes. It's like a good solo episode. So obviously thank you for coming back on the podcast and doing this with me, and maybe we'll do some more solos here or there every once in a while to kind of keep the podcast going in a certain way if people flake as guests or whatever. And I mean, shit happens, but um If you guys like the podcast, please rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, share with your family, share with your grandma. Check it out, thecarrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also available Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major listening platforms. If you'd like to watch a podcast, go on YouTube, search The Carroll Connection, or at Jared M. Carroll, and it should pop up for you. And if you want to be a guest or return as a guest, hit me up on Instagram at Jared M. Carroll or at The Carroll Connection, and we'll set that up. As well as plugging the 5 Pillars to Create a Meaningful Life, only available on Amazon. And if you buy the book and you read it, please submit the review. It goes a long way in the algorithm. And it's going to be a couple weeks before I drop another episode. And then the next one I'll probably drop is going to be my birthday reflection. And then we should be back to guest after that, taking a little break, doing some other stuff. So until next time, guys, peace.